Honorable heads of state and government, honorable ministers, excellencies, distinguished delegates, the Assembly will now resume its consideration of Agenda Item 1, opening of the session, to hear the opening statements. At this stage, allow me to invite Mrs. Djatougbe Aziaka from the Non-Governmental Organizations Major Group to deliver a 5-minute statement on behalf of all major groups and stakeholders.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, President. Your Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am Djatougbe Aziaka, the co-facilitator of the NGO Major Group, speaking on behalf of the 9 major groups and other stakeholders. I will be speaking on the joint MGS statement on the UNEP We Want. My colleagues later will present to you the UNEP We Want report. The joint statement, which was distributed to you last Tuesday, has 51 paragraphs and an annex covering UNEP's successes and failures in its first 50 years from the perspective of the MGS, our vision of UNEP, and UNEP looking forward, including the UNEP We Want and the collaborative participation of MGS, that is, major groups and stakeholders. In the short time that we have, I would like to share with you a few key messages from our joint statement. In its first 50 years, the major groups and stakeholders, the MGS, have collaborated with UNEP in many key areas, and we recognize and appreciate UNEP's key strategic role as a fact-finder, advocate, convener, collaborator, administrator, communicator, reinforcer, and platform for environmental matters as the anchor institution of the United Nations on the environment. We believe that UNEP could achieve more in the future through education and public awareness, stakeholder engagement, evidence-based assessments, and outlooks. Could achieve more by strengthening multilateral environmental law and governance, by strengthening the science policy interface, through capacity building on environmental policy implementation at the national level. Could do more by supporting the development of open source citizen science platforms and by developing policy guidance and global standards, all in collaboration and cooperation with the MGS. Areas where UNEP can be strengthened include its role in environmental governance and access to justice, its authority and autonomy within the UN system, its funding base, including transparency on corporate funding and earmarking, and greater capacity building at national and local levels. Indigenous peoples are crucial for the conservation of biodiversity, and their knowledge and livelihoods should not be undermined. Yet, we cannot put the burden of being the conservationists of biodiversity on them. UNEP should address all aspects of environmental equity and justice, including women, the youth, and persons who are disproportionately affected by the triple environmental crises. We call upon UNEA to do more to support the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment at the global and national levels. We call on UNEP to take action to support environmental human rights. The rights established by UNDRIP, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Persons, and UNDROP, as well as Principle 10 of the Rio Declaration on the rights of access to information, public participation, and access to justice in environmental matters. UNEP should take a leading role as a principal authority in establishing UN environmental governance and legal frameworks while respecting indigenous rights and autonomy. We have also made a number of specific recommendations on UNEP and UNEA's engagement with MGS and the MGS themselves, in line with paragraph 88 of the Future We Want. We believe that UNEP's stakeholder engagement processes should evolve best practice approaches and new mechanisms so as to ensure equitable, active, and ongoing engagement with all relevant stakeholders. There are many recommendations in this regard, and we invite you to look deeper into our joint statement. Thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Aziaka.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aziaka, for your message.
For this meeting, we shall hear the remaining speakers on the list this afternoon in this conference room. The second plenary will begin at 3 p.m. with the consideration of agenda items 5, presentation of the report of the Executive Director on a science policy interface, and agenda item number 6, presentation of the stakeholder report entitled the UNEP We Want. I invite all delegations to join the flagship side event for the launch of the World Environment Situation Room in Conference Room 1. Before proceeding further, I invite delegations to view a short commemorative video on UNEP at 50.
We are facing an existential crisis.
Unlike anything the world has ever seen.
We need to take action.
Everyone has to stand up.
The warning is not a new one.
Our world faces a triple planetary crisis of climate change, nature loss, and pollution.
For generations, humanity, often without realizing it, has been destroying the natural world. In the name of progress, we have polluted the Earth's oceans, chopped down its forests, and clouded its skies. Today, nature and our own survival rest on a knife's edge.
It's time to ratchet up the action that we need to have at the country level.
The United Nations Environment Programme was established with one goal in mind: to unite the world in saving our planet.
It is clear that the environmental crisis which is confronting the world will profoundly alter the future destiny of our planet.
For 5 decades, UNEP has used science and its mandate to bring the world together to help nations find solutions to grave environmental threats.
What is this pollution that we have heard so much about?
The Mediterranean is sick. It's being poisoned slowly but steadily for those who need it most.
The 1970s found a world grappling with an unprecedented crisis of pollution. Could the seemingly irreparable damage be undone? UNEP inspired the world to take action, preventing oil spills and toxic discharge by ships, uniting 143 coastal states to limit ocean pollution and save marine life, reducing air pollution and ending the scourge of acid rain. But soon, the world would face its biggest environmental challenge yet.
The destruction of the ozone layer on a global scale is no longer just a theory. The hole over the Antarctica is no longer an isolated seasonal phenomenon.
If the breach continued to grow, the planet would suffer lethal levels of ultraviolet radiation, harming human health, biodiversity, and climate. In 1987, UNEP facilitated the Montreal Protocol. Over 30 countries agreed to phase out the production of almost 100 ozone-depleting substances. The protocol remains one of the greatest achievements of multilateralism.
All nations gathered here to be proud of what we have achieved.
This success set the tone for a series of powerful accords, limiting the movement of toxic waste across borders, protecting the Earth from dangerous, long-lasting chemicals, and restricting the international trade in mercury. Most recently, in 2021, UNEP finished a 2-decade-long campaign to rid the world of highly toxic leaded petrol, saving an estimated 1 million lives each year. As the world grappled with pollution and waste, another crisis was brewing.
I have dreamt of seeing the great herds of wild animals, jungles and rainforests, full of birds and butterflies. But now I wonder if they will even exist for my children to see.
Poaching and habitat loss were pushing some of the world's most iconic animals to the brink of extinction. Driven by science, UNEP supported a series of international treaties, limiting and in some cases banning the trade of endangered species, safeguarding migratory animals, expanding protected areas, and increasing financing for biodiversity protection. The seminal Earth Summit in Brazil introduced the idea of sustainable development.
This is an historical moment for the mobilization of all peoples of the world.
Over the last 5 decades, UNEP has helped more than 100 countries enshrine the right to a healthy environment in their constitutions and produced scientific studies to guide member states in their decision-making. In 2012, a new international body was established to provide scientific data on biodiversity in a joint effort from UNEP and other UN organizations. In 2019, it found that 1 million species face the threat of extinction, underscoring the urgency to act.
Every action we take alters the earth that future generations will inherit.
The world is starting to recognize the effects of planetary warming, but UNEP began sounding the alarm 3 decades ago. As early as 1988, UNEP and the World Meteorological Organization launched the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. For over 30 years, IPCC science has helped member states counter climate change, earning the body a Nobel Prize for its work. UNEP-backed studies have informed some of the planet's most crucial climate accords. These include a 1992 agreement that set a template for curbing greenhouse gas emissions, followed by the Kyoto Protocol and the landmark 2015 Paris Agreement.
I'm proud to announce that 175 parties have signed the Paris Agreement.
UNEP has also mobilized 450 banks, insurers, and investors to help create a more sustainable world.
We don't want fossil fuels anymore.
A lot has happened in the last 50 years, but it's the next 10 that will be pivotal for life on this planet.
But in fact, what you and I and other ordinary people around the world can do will not by itself save the natural world. The great decisions, the great disasters that face us can only be dealt with by governments. And that's why this organization is so important.
Over the past 50 years, we've seen when the world decides to act, the world comes together to act. Together with member states and partners, we've achieved a lot. But now is the time to truly make that lift for humanity and to do much more and much faster. And I have every reason to be hopeful. As an organization grounded in science, UNEP will do everything in its power to push for breakthroughs. Our planet and humanity depends on us. Together, we can build a greener and safer and fairer world for all.